will gain you attention. Okay? Some students will think that you are a teacher's pet, which is a bad thing. The teacher will take note of your attentiveness, which is a good thing. This is like off the top, and it doesn't need to be great. This is just an example so that you get the idea. What you end up recognizing is that being, I forget what I even just said. Being what did I just say? I wish I could rewind reality. If those new tachyon particles or whatever they are that came back, where you can supposed to go back in time, that the scientists just discovered goes faster than the speed of light. If I could just use that to go back and remember what I just said. I don't remember what I just said. But anyway, it's sort of like, getting the attention, being a student who gets the attention is a fact of the matter. And sometimes that attention is good attention, and sometimes that attention is bad attention, right? I'm not trying to reinvent the wheel here or make this more difficult than it has to be. I gave you an example. You get the format, right? You get the idea. That's all that I care about. My example was it crashed and burned miserably, right? So divergent argument, here's the structure. I mean, it's not difficult. It's not too difficult at all. And you'll be able to identify it easily in reading, and that's what's important. That's so that I get back on track. That's what's important. It's not about me coming up with examples. I just give you examples to get your mind jogging, so that you can think, okay, yeah, I get an idea. It's when you're reading, whatever it is that you're reading, right? It could be, if you're a medical student reading medical texts, or you're a history student reading history texts, or an anthropology student, whatever you might be doing, and you're reading, and you're saying, this one point led to two what seem to be conflicting, divergent claims. Is that right? Is that wrong? Is that good or bad? It's not a problem, right? Here's how it works. They have a name for it. They have a format for it. They have a formula for it. There's a way to diagram it. This is just to let you know that those types of arguments are out there. They exist. I'll go back home and I'll tidy up this quote, make sure I get it right. But I think what I have here written is pretty much self-explanatory. It should be obviously basic. Okay? I don't think that's too difficult at all. Next is parallel argument. Parallel argument. Parallel argument has the following format. And let's draw that visualization. It looks like this. S1 plus S2 plus ... Sn leads me to SU. It's supposed to be an O. Okay, so S1 plus S2 plus Sn leads me to SO. You will find parallel arguments all the time. I wouldn't say it's the most common form of argumentation. In this particular section of the segment, Section 3 of critical thinking, I'm not going to go into critiques of these because each one has its various strengths and weaknesses. The format itself has its strengths and weaknesses, but I would say that parallel argumentation is probably one of the most common. I wouldn't say it's the most common, but I'd say parallel argumentation is one of the most common forms of argumentation because it just comes so naturally, which means that people abuse it to death, right? And we'll look at instances of parallel argumentation in a second. I don't want to give away the goods just yet. Okay, so let's look at an example of parallel argumentation. And I'm reading, right? Well, I'm going to bomb physics. This is a direct quote from the book. This is my example, right? Well, I'm going to bomb physics. I'm really going to do well in chemistry. So I'm going to fail physics, but I'm going to do well in chemistry. My physics grades are F, D, and D minus. Not a good student, right? F, D, and D minus. In physics, I shouldn't say, well, technically maybe that school's not, just come on the internet, watch videos for free, you can get a lot smarter without any other headache. Because it's self-initiated. A little plug for virtual education. Well, well, I'm going to bomb physics. I'm really going to do well in chemistry. My physics grades are F, D, and D minus, whereas my chemistry grades are A plus, B plus. This is why I love the text, and I am actually going to bring the text in the next time I do, even if I cite it or not in the next segment. I'm going to bring the text in because I got to give a shout out to the author, Gary Jason. It was a really, it's just, I mean, what's not to love about, that's how it's quoted in the book, right? Sort of extremely informally, right? I love that informal nature. And, you know, I'm going to bomb my physics. I'm doing really well in chemistry. My physics grades are F, D, and D minus, whereas you shouldn't put the whereas if you're trying to be that informal though, right? Whereas my chemistry grades are A plus, and B plus, right? Does that even sound like an argument? It is, right? It's a parallel argument. So, how does this argument look, right? Number one, and it's pretty easy to identify arguments when you're dealing with a sentence or two sentences. Once we get to the JFK speech, when you're talking about paragraphs, and I didn't even do the whole speech, obviously, it's too big, right? I just took a segment out of the speech. Then this is where creativity comes in, right? So this is where you're going to have various interpretations, so that my interpretation and my visual representation of the argument might differ from your visual representation of the argument. There will be better and worse visual representations. It'll be hard to have an outright wrong visual representation of the argument, but in order to be able to get to that level, which we're slowly going to get to, we need to understand the basics, right? So number one is, I am going to do poorly in physics. I am going to do poorly in physics. Okay, so number one, I'm going to do poorly in physics. Number two, I'm going to do well in chemistry. Well in chem. Okay, I'm going to do poorly in physics, but I'm going to do well in chemistry. Number three, my physics grades are F, D, and D minus. Right, so I'll just put physics grades. I don't feel like writing all that. And then number four, my chem grades, right? And then we'll put chem grades. Chem grades are A's, physics grades are F's and that, right? So, okay, I'm going to do poorly in physics. I'm going to do well in chemistry. My physics grades are this, my chem grades are that. Very, very simple. Very, very simple. Very straightforward. The way that you map this, right, visually, is 3. My physics grades are this, right? So we begin with 3. My physics grades are this, F, which is bad, obviously. And therefore, I recognize that I'm going to do poorly, right? 1. Right? A different marker. Right? So my physics grades are bad. Therefore, I'm going to do bad. Then, the next point, my chem grades are good. I got an A in chem, rather. That's 4. And then, obviously, since I did so well, I'm going to do well. Since my grades are good, I'm going to do well. That's basically it. Parallel argumentation, right? Physics grades were, D's and F's. Therefore, I'm not going to do well. Chem grades were A's and B's. Therefore, I am going to do well. Very simple. This is how it looks, right? So that's the format that it takes. Okay. Simple enough. Moving along. Okay. I'm trying to fit the other 2 on the board. Number 3. Next is a serial argument. Next is a serial argument. Serial arguments you'll find a lot. I shouldn't be telling people this, but I tend to use serial arguments quite a bit in combinations with many, many other forms. But I like the flow of a serial argument because it's conducive to sort of variations on hypothetical syllogisms and sort of augmentations that you can do in more advanced logic. So I tend to use serial arguments, not all the time, but quite a bit. All right, and there's many, many different forms, but because in the book he presents 4 of them, and they're the 4 that everybody immediately sort of recognizes. It's good that you guys now know what these things are, and not only that, you know what it looks like, right? So I'm missing on my lines here. This goes here, obviously. This goes here, sort of shifted downwards a bit. And this is going to actually, I'll just put it over here. Okay, so this goes here, that goes here, and then I'll put this one over here because it'll be too low. So the representation of a serial argument is the following.